It started as just another quiet flight. Somewhere over the Atlantic, clouds rolled below like crushed silver velvet, and sunlight leaked through the window blinds in slow, golden pulses. The seatbelt sign was on. The engines hummed. Most passengers were half asleep, earbuds in, blankets up to their chins. But in seat 15A, an old man sat wide awake. His hands trembled slightly. Not from age, but something deeper. Something heavier. He wore a worn leather jacket, faded patches stitched on the sleeves. A few letters still visible under the years of wear: Artie, CROWN. Every once in a while he'd look out the window. Just stare into the blue. There was something about him. Quiet but commanding. The kind of presence that didn't ask for attention, yet drew it naturally. A flight attendant walked past, slowed a little, smiled. "Can I get you something, sir? Water? Coffee?" He smiled faintly. "Coffee's fine." Black. His voice was gravel and wind. The kind of tone that carried stories you'd never find in books. 40 minutes later, the calm broke. The captain's voice came over the intercom, strained, uncertain. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're being escorted by 2 F-35 fighter jets. No cause for concern. It's standard procedure in some flight corridors." The passengers stirred. Phones lifted toward the windows. And there they were. Two sleek, gray shadows sliding alongside the plane, their wings glinting against the sun, slicing through the sky like sharks through water. The cabin buzzed with whispers. Why are they here? Are we in danger? But seat 56 stayed still. The old man's eyes locked on the jets. He knew that sound, that sight, those maneuvers. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small, metal tag, old, dented, faded. It hung on a thin chain. The words barely legible: COL. Reichard H. Morrow, USAF call sign Ironhand. The coffee cup trembled in his grasp. Outside, one of the F-35s tilted its wings, just slightly. Almost like it was peering in. The pilot must have seen something. And then, impossibly, both F-35s broke formation. They banked hard, then came back side by side and performed a slow, deliberate salute roll. Mid-air. Passengers gasped. Cameras rolled. Nobody understood what was happening. But the old man in 16A just lowered his head. His lips moved in silence. A whisper only he could hear. If you believe that respect, loyalty, and legacy never die. If you believe that some heroes never stop being saluted. Please, like this video, share it with someone who still believes in honor. And subscribe to Veterans Legacy, where stories like these live forever. Colonel Richard Morrow, Ironhand. Once the kind of name that could command silence in any hangar. 40 years ago, he wasn't just another pilot. He was the pilot. The man who led squadrons through the worst skies in the Gulf, and later trained generations of Air Force legends. He had that rare mix of sharp instinct and reckless courage. The kind that made him a nightmare to enemies. And a hero to everyone else. But war doesn't end when you land. It just moves inside you. When he came home, he left the cockpit, but the cockpit never left him. His wife had passed years ago. His son didn't talk to him much anymore. There was too much silence between them. Too much pride. Too many things never said. Every morning, he'd walk to the local diner, same seat, same black coffee. The waitress would smile, "Morning, Colonel." He'd nod, look out the window, and trace invisible lines in the air, flight paths only he could see. The world had moved on to stealth jets, drones, and satellites. But for him, the sky was still home. It was his son, David, that hurt the most. David had joined the Air Force too. Wanted to follow in his father's steps. But where Richard was old school grit, David was digital precision. They clashed. Over training. Over methods. Over what it meant to serve. One night, after a heated argument, David said words that never stopped echoing. "You don't understand what honor is anymore, Dad. You're stuck in the past." And just like that, they stopped talking. Years passed. David climbed the ranks, became a test pilot. But every time Richard saw an F-35 cut across the sky, he'd whisper, "Fly safe, son." Even if the world thought they were strangers now. That flight, seat 16A, wasn't random. He wasn't heading to a vacation, he was heading to Arlington. His best friend, Major Jack Rook Hensley, had passed away. The man who once pulled him out of a burning A-10 back in 91. They hadn't seen each other in over a decade. But when Richard got the call, he knew he had to go. Some debts don't expire. As he looked out the window at those F-35s saluting, something broke loose inside him. He thought of all the faces he'd seen fade away. The ones who never made it home. The nights sitting alone with medals that felt more like memories than honors. He whispered, voice cracking, "Rook, they still remember." A tear rolled down his cheek. He didn't even try to wipe it away. The cabin felt heavy. The air, thick with ghosts. When the flight landed, the captain came out personally. He looked pale, nervous, almost reverent. "Sir," he said softly, "the Air Force base nearby just radioed us. They identified your call sign. The F-35s were training nearby, and when they heard your name on the manifest, they requested permission to escort and salute." Richard blinked, stunned. They remembered Ironhand. Passengers around him clapped quietly. A few saluted. A few just nodded with tears in their eyes. He smiled, really smiled, for the first time in years. But the biggest surprise came at the terminal. A man in uniform waited by the gate. Flight suit. Rank insignia gleaming. It was David, his son. They just looked at each other for a long time. No words, no movement. Just the weight of lost years. Then David took a shaky breath and said, "Those F-35s, I led that squadron." The old man froze. David's voice cracked. "When I saw the manifest, your name, I couldn't believe it. I had to make it right." Richard's eyes welled. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. David stepped forward, and for the first time in decades, the son saluted the father. Slow, firm, trembling. Richard returned it, hand shaking, and then they hugged. The kind of hug that erases years in seconds. The funeral the next day wasn't just for Major Hensley. It became a reunion of souls, of generations of lessons. Old pilots came, young ones too. They shared stories, laughed about bad landings, cried about lost brothers. David stood beside his father the entire time. When the honor guard folded the flag and handed it over, Richard leaned toward his son. "You know," he said, "you were right. Maybe I was stuck in the past." David smiled softly. "And maybe I forgot who taught me to fly." They both looked up. A pair of F-35s roared overhead in formation. Then one peeled away, rising toward the sun, the missing man formation. Richard closed his eyes, whispered, "Goodbye, Rook." In the weeks that followed, Richard moved onto the base with David. Not for long, just enough time to teach again, to tell stories, to remind young pilots that flying wasn't just about skill. It was about soul. One afternoon, a cadet asked him, "Sir, what's it like to fly?" Richard smiled, looked out at the sky that had been his home. "It's like shaking hands with God," he said softly. "But the real miracle is coming back down and still remembering who you did it for." The cadet nodded, and the legend of Ironhand lived on. If you felt that, if this story reminded you of someone who served, someone who gave everything and asked for nothing, please like this video, share it with your family, and subscribe to Veterans Legacy, where we keep these stories alive, so no hero ever sits forgotten in seat 60A again.
If you like this video, please hit like and subscribe to Veterans Legacy for upcoming amazing stories